because it was very much on Youth Day. Yeah, Youth Day was about how youth need to push more for change. And it was so inspiring to hear, because it wasn't like youth need to stand back and just trust that we're going to get things done. It was not that at all. It was youth need to yell, and they need to fight, and they need to shout, and they need to demand change. And I was just really inspired by that. And I'm not even a youth. And I was inspired by it. So it's so great to hear that shit. All right, so we are gonna go live. I think I got a thumbs up from our friend or our tech behind the scenes. And Rebecca, I can't find you on my screen, but we're gonna go thumbs up that we're ready to go live. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our series at the Center for It was a great reminder. We are joining you live from COP in Scotland, Glasgow, Scotland. It's been a wonderful, amazing couple of days since the conference started. We're just getting to the end of our first week. We have friends joining us today from all over the world, from Canada, from Russia, from India, from Bangladesh, from here in London and Scotland and all over the UK. And I'm just so excited to, Barcelona is here now as well. It's so amazing and so inspiring to share the message that we have today, which is sort of a mix of new technologies, what's coming, what's on the horizon, how are we rethinking how we capture carbon, how carbon removal, all that sorts of things. And we're kind of mishmashing it with youth action, because should they be separate? Today is Youth Day at COP. So every organization has been celebrating, championing, and asking for youth voice. And sometimes we think, well, this is really, do they want to hear it? Like they'll say, come up and speak. But then afterwards, it's like they were listening, but am I getting a pat on the head? Or are they actually listening for like my advice and my desires? What do you guys think? Like, does that feel like, because you don't want to be, no one wants to be tokenized or patronized or anything like that, right? You want to feel like your voice is valid and meaningful. And so I have been inspired by so many conversations that we've had today that are really about listening to youth and hearing them and asking them to help propel this. So help giving them what we would say in Canada, a mandate to do the work. So oftentimes we hear, I want to do this, or they make commitments, but then no one really pushes them to come through. And so what's the penalty? But what they want from you is that mandate, those protests, that aggression and angst that says, actually, I have to ask her, I might lose my job. You know, like that feeling that there's an urgency and a time. Anyways, I could talk for hours about this. Obviously, I'm at COP. But I'd like to give a chance to my friends here who are joining me from around the world to introduce themselves. And so, Ian, let's start with you, and then we'll make our way down.
My name is Ian. My name is Ian Gunga. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm 15 years old. This is my first time at COP, and yeah, the experience has been nice. It's been interesting. It's been exciting. And if there's one thing I've taken away from it so far, it would be that of course I've taken away some knowledge, but I also feel like my voice has been heard.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Nyla. I am from California. And I think like Ian, so this is my first COP as well. And it's been crazy. I think it's definitely been this mix between hectic running between different events, and also just that like calm when you're sitting and watching other events and you kind of just get to hear and listen, because that's the biggest part. And I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from COP and being so far is that people are willing to listen to you. It's just, we need to find that balance between giving people problems and listening to others.
Awesome, thanks, Nyla, perfect.
I am Jada. I'm from Canada, and I'm currently in the middle of rethinking. It was just mentioned in one of the sessions that we just sat in on that there is so little youth here, and that we are one of the lucky ones. And Terry and Sarah fought for us to be in here, and they got us in here, but still outside of conference center and this event, there are thousands of youth protesting, And there is a disconnect between those voices outside and the voices that are happening inside. Because I'm noticing a lot of older people in their nice suits talking and drinking coffee, which sounds lovely to be them, but at the same time, something inside has felt a little wrong about it.
Like, where's the urgency? Where's
exactly.
that, like there's a lot of talking, but where's the action? Where's that determination and the anxiety, I think, that many people, young people in particular, are feeling, because we're hearing this is an emergency, but then we're not seeing people running around like they do in an emergency. There's no ambulances, there's no sirens. And why are we using this language if we aren't going to act on it in the same way? So anyways, we have a full program. I could talk forever, but we have some amazing, fabulous, wonderful guests from around the world. We have Climeworks in our feature. We have the Carbon Removal Center. We have some amazing youth leaders, and I can't wait to hear from all of them. Now, before we start, I do want to say that I am, though we're on a virtual platform, many of us around the world are joining from Indigenous lands. And I want to acknowledge that we embrace and we empower and we hear the voices and all the stories of the people of the lands wherever we are inhabiting and wherever we are residing and traveling through during our time in this conference. So thank you. I just want to extend that. First, our first guest today is Celine. She is, skip over a few. Oh, no, our first guest is Tom. Tom, who is with the Carbon Removal Center. Welcome, Tom. I would love for you to introduce yourself and give us an idea about your role at the Carbon Removal Center and some details about the Carbon Removal Center itself.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks so much for the invitation to be here. Really pleased to be here with the team as well, who I'd like to introduce in a moment. I just wanted to ask you, Sarah, about the slides which I put into the master deck. Should I just share my screen? And I can give a little bit.
If you'd like, because then you can do your own transitions. I do have them here, though, if you would prefer. It's totally up to you.
No, I'm happy to work through the slides. I just need permission to screen share.
And they're coming now. There you are.
Okay. Thank you very much. Here we go. Okay. So, at the Carbon Removal Center, we are our vision rebalancing the carbon cycle. Can you all hear me okay? I just got a bit of feedback then for a moment. Okay, great. So we are a community of entrepreneurs, businesses, academics, and different kinds of organizations, and we come together to explore and envision how we do carbon removal. There are many different ways of doing it. One of the things that we're starting to do with carbon removal is establish a clear set of language, establish terms, because there's lots of different ways of referring to it. And to set up clear communication in this space is a really important sort of first step to enabling people to work together and have a shared vision of how we remove carbon from the atmosphere and try to meet those targets for global warming and keeping it in check. So carbon removal is sometimes called carbon dioxide removal, CDR. That's the term that we use most often, but you might hear carbon drawdown, greenhouse gas removal, negative emissions, and air mining, to name a few. So we're developing a glossary of terms that's open access to everyone so that we can all kind of agree on the same language and make it easier to communicate. We work through there's like 7 major carbon removal techniques we're looking at the moment, but that list of methods is expanding. And as I put a note in the slides, we expect to discover and innovate new ways of doing carbon removal. And I like to think that maybe even some of the people on this call today might come up with those ideas as we develop these platforms to work together and come up with new methods. Biochar, BECS stands for bioenergy, carbon capture and storage. So that's, burning biomass, plants, wood, and capturing the carbon from them. Then we have blue carbon, ways of storing carbon in the oceans through whales, their life cycles, or growing seaweed. We have DAC, which is the technical and engineered solutions, which is going to be great to hear some more about from Climeworks. And forestry, of course, planting trees. Enhanced weathering is using crushed rock dust to suck carbon out of the air when rock reacts with carbon dioxide in the air. And that can also be used in soils as one way of helping the soil store carbon. So there's lots of different methods, and we work through these different methods to try and come up with ways of practicing them in a sort of fair and inclusive way. So at the Carbon Removal Centre, we focus on this bottom-up approach. And a bottom-up approach we could define by some of these principles. Bottom-up is really about trying to bring everyone together and allowing solutions to emerge and come out of conversation and co-design. So that's one of the principles you can see there, of like, how do we create these solutions together with our overlapping interests? And that sort of approach, this kind of bottom-up approach, helps us create social equity and share the value of how we create these systems and these methods for practicing carbon removal, so that they have the most benefits for all. So you can see some of the principles here on this slide of how we practice carbon removal and how we seek to get other people to approach this really crucial area of climate change. And have participation and social and climate justice include lots of different perspectives. And with all of that, we can really develop this kind of collective intelligence to come up with things that we might not be able to do individually. How we bring some of these kind of practices into action is bringing lots of different perspectives together to make maps of the future carbon removal economies. So this is one program we have going called Positively Negative, where we bring together people working on policy, people involved in business and innovation, academics, industries that are seeking to change and decarbonize and invest in carbon removal. And we come together and we make these colorful maps like this, looking at these different forms of carbon removal. So this map, I think you can see, is the one for bioenergy. And this really helps us kind of bring lots of different perspectives together into one place and then look at, well, how do we actually pay for doing carbon removal and who should pay for it? And it helps us sort of raise those questions up and share them. So that's one of our programs. And the other one I'll mention, thing that we're doing at the moment, is running a podcast called Carbon Matters. And so we have lists, we have episodes on the different methods of carbon removal you can see there. We're currently developing some exciting new forms of engaging with the community and bringing people together to this end. And so quite soon, before the end of the year, we're going to have some exciting ways of engaging on our website, and we'll be hosting these maps as kind of living maps so that people can comment on them, tag each other, and really get involved in this way and bring other people into the space. So that's my kind of quick overview of some things that we're doing at the Carbon Removal Centre and how we approach it with this bottom-up approach. Here's just an overview of our team, and I'm delighted that most of us, I think, are on the call today. So I wondered if I could just ask the team to introduce themselves, and I could call names if that's easier. I'm going to stop the share now so I can see the audience. So if people could just unmute themselves and say hello and say what their interest is in carbon removal or expertise. Steve, would you be happy to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Tom. I'll go first and I'll be really, really quick. So I'm Steve Hall. I'm an academic at the University of Leeds. I'm interested in policy, economics and business models. Ask me anything about how we bring carbon removal to ground, who pays for it, who should pay for it. And my particular interest is how carbon removal and ecosystem can bring us new habitats to enjoy and tackle climate change.
Yes. Fran, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, I'll try and be quick as well. Hi everyone, I'm Fran. Maybe ask me anything. I mean, I'm in charge of the corporate work, so we're speaking directly to companies about CDR. I think there's a really interesting angle maybe around how the youth's brought into that conversation, because we need to speak to companies about this in a way that avoids those historical mistakes and avoids that kind of incumbency around how climate action in the corporate sector has been treated historically. So it'd be really interesting to hear perspectives on how those conversations should go.
Great, thank you. Mark, I can see you there. Would you say hi?
Yeah, hi, pleasure to be on this. Thanks very much all. So my name is Mark Workman. I'm a specialist in strategic foresight. I helped co-found the Carbon Removal Centre with a bunch of colleagues. I'm very interested in working out how we can give the relevant actors a voice in this space. And I'm also very interested in understanding what the value this space brings beyond money, so we can get away from this least cost pathological approach to the way that we do things. And I think engaging with the future generations is a really important aspect of that, hence my interest and pleasure to be here. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mark. And how about the hello from Anisha and Mark Turner, and then Victoria, if you're all here. I'm delighted to have some new team members join us today as well.
Yeah, I am here. Hi everyone, my name is Anisha. I have actually just been working with Steve. I am a master's student at the University of Leeds on a course called Sustainable Cities. So looking at all different kinds of urban systems and how to make them more sustainable for cities around the world. And I'm now working with the CRC on communications and social media.
Hi there, I'm Mark. I just started doing some work with the Carbon Removal Centre. I used to be a journalist, foreign correspondent, ended up in humanitarian aid and communicating with people in crisis. And now I'm basically gone into climate, very interested in basically working out how people from different worlds can communicate with each other, understand each other, kind of share values and so forth, because we often speak such different languages that we end up in distrust. So how do we overcome that?
And hi, I'm Victoria. I'm also new to the team, but I have experience on the technical side. I'm working with Fran, and I'm really interested in just bridging the gaps between nations. I've experienced working within the US and UK in the sector, and just bridging the gap between nations, within nations, seeing how collaboration can bring us forward within this space. It's really exciting to speak with you guys today, and yeah, ask me anything.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to have the whole team here. I'm not sure if we've got Richard here. Does anyone know? I can't see on the list.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, Richard, thanks.
My camera's not on at the moment, though, so apologies for that. But yeah, just quickly. So I'm Richard Hick. I've been on the team for a while now, but I've been looking largely at how Mark Workman covered it. It's how communities and people contribute to the discussion, how they shape the rules and what we can and can't do in carbon removal. And that's working with the sort of local communities, but that's also through local NGO groups as well.
Brilliant, thanks, Richard. Really crucial part of the work we're doing around social engagement. How do we practice good governance and engagement around CDR? So it's great to hear from all the team and be here together. Thank you so much, Sarah, for the invitation, and excited to be working with Becky in the future and doing more of this kind of engagement, and looking forward to hearing from all of you. So do ask us anything. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tom. I think when we first started speaking, one of the most powerful things that you talked to me about is how you educate people that carbon isn't actually the enemy, that it's the building blocks of life, and it's just how we manage, how we are using and overusing and processing, and that we really need to refocus so that it's not a bad guy, but it's how a system works effectively and how everything is an ecosystem, and we're part of that ecosystem, and we're made of carbon, and that we can't make it the enemy that easily, and that it's easy to find bad guys, but we can't in this.
It's such a good point, Sarah. Just have to respond briefly to that, to say this thinking, I hear a lot of the time, part of me winces when I hear about, the battle of climate change, winning the battle and winning the war. And this kind of making carbon the enemy is part of that story. And I'm interested in the different stories that are about us participating in the natural system and not somehow beating something, you know, overcoming something. I think is a very different approach. So I really appreciate that.
And with that, I think it makes a great transition over to our friends at Climeworks. So Celine's joining us today from Climeworks, and she's in Zurich. She's a senior manager at corporate partnerships. She's passionate about preserving our natural world and enabling people as well as companies to act meaningfully and reach their climate targets. She's recognized for being instrumental in the establishment of the company's crucial and initial collaborations with renowned corporations such as Microsoft and Shopify. And she believes in order to fight climate change and take meaningful action, solutions need to reach global climate targets, and is excited to see the field of carbon dioxide removal growing very quickly. Celine, welcome. I know personally, I have seen in Canada, there was recently a big Vice video that went around like all of social media that featured Climeworks and the work you're doing and how innovative and new and exciting it is. And I was like, whoa, she's coming on one of our video conferences. Oh my goodness. So welcome. We're very excited to have you and to hear more about the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's really an honor to be here today and to present our solution. Thank you for having us. I will share a few slides with you. Hopefully it works. There we go. Can you see my screen? You should be able to see it. I don't see a sign, but you should be able to see it.
Yes,
So
yes. Good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'll go in presentation mode. So directly starting with what you can see here on the first page, this is Orca. It's our latest plant, which we just launched in Iceland. It's a plant which removes about 4,000 tons of CO2 per year and permanently stores it underground. And I'll go into it into more details how the technology works, so you have an idea of what it is actually that Climeworks does. And here you can see Orca from the other side. And basically, what we have on, I hope you can, this will work. Yep. So basically what we have at the Orca plant, we have collector containers. So this is a collector container, which is stacked on another collector container. So we have these duos of collector containers, and we have 4 of them at Orca. And here on this side, we have the entry for the air, so to say, and on the other side, the exit for the air. And in the middle of our collectors, we have a filter. And on this filter, we have sorbent material, which captures the CO2 molecules which are in the air when air goes through the collector. And again, I'll show you a bit more how this works afterwards, but so you have an idea. And these 2 guys here are our 2 CEOs, Jan and Christoph. They founded the company in 2009. This was part of their PhD studies in Zurich. And they were themselves quite impressed to see Orca in real life when we launched the plant in September, because you can imagine they started at lab scale with super small prototypes, and now we have a real plant which is actually capturing and storing CO2 underground. So that's quite cool. To the company I mentioned, so we're founded by Jan and Christoph in 2009, and we're now just short of or actually just above 150 employees. Most of us, as you can see here, are located in Zurich, where our headquarters is. And we also have a smaller office in Germany and one in Iceland, where we do this entire process of capturing and storing CO2 underground. So we're quite a growing company, and it's a very dynamic environment to be in as an employee. Myself, I joined Climeworks 2 years ago, and I must say, in these 2 years, it's been quite impressive to see how the space of carbon dioxide removal has evolved. So it's really something that's growing and developing very fast, and it's very interesting to see the more and more demands and interest there is from different stakeholders in general. But taking a step back, this is maybe something many of us are already familiar with, but we want to make here the difference between the reduction of CO2 emissions and the removal of CO2 emissions. So we base everything at Climeworks on science and targeting these net zero emissions by 2050. And if we are to reach that target of net zero emissions in 2050, we have to drastically reduce our emissions. We have to move to renewable energies, develop closed loop of CO2 usage, and so on. So this is really the priority, I would say. But then on top of that, and this is what the IPCC scenarios have proven over the last years, we'll need to remove billions of tons of CO2 from the air. And what we're trying to do at Climeworks is tackling exactly these emissions, so the ones which are already in the air, the historic emissions, and the unavoidable emissions. If we think of companies targeting net zero emissions, they usually have a reduction pathway, so they're reducing their emissions, but they will have unavoidable emissions, and we're really trying to tackle that with a technology like direct air capture. And especially when we think of the scale, these billions of tons of CO2 that we have to remove, with the technology, it's quite practical because we can scale and we can develop and try to reach a climate relevant scale. How our technology works. So you can see here a picture or an image of our collector, and it works in two phases, the whole process. So the first phase is the adsorption phase, and the second phase is the desorption phase for the CO2. So in the first phase, we have our ventilation here, which is where the CO2 goes, or where the air goes out, sorry. And we draw ambient air with the ventilation in the collector. And as mentioned, the CO2 molecules which are in the air actually bind to our filter material. So you can imagine our sorbent material is sort of small granules, which really captures the CO2 molecules when they go through. And then CO2-free air is released again from the collector. And then in the second phase, that's a desorption phase, the collector senses entirely by itself that the filter is saturated with CO2 molecules, and we close it on one side, and then we heat up the filter material to about 100 degrees Celsius. We do that either with hot water, which flows through small tubes in the filter, or with steam, which heats up the entire filter directly. And then this heat triggers a natural reaction whereby the CO2 molecules will be released again from our filter. And the last step is extremely important. We gather the CO2 in a highly concentrated gas form. And this step is crucial because we can exactly measure how much CO2 we have removed from the air. So this is also something that differentiates us from other carbon dioxide removal solution. And because we're a technology, we have a lot of data which is processed and which flows throughout the process that we gather, and we can know exactly how much CO2 we have actually captured from the air, and then how much CO2 we actually put into storage. So that's very useful for our developments. And coming back to Orca, so here you can see a few pictures of the construction process. It was all in all, I would say the real construction lasted for about 6 months. So we had a team of Zurich climb workers who went up to Iceland and worked with local workers to construct the plant. They worked in quite harsh conditions during the Icelandic winter, and they sometimes had to stop entirely the production because of snowstorms or different things. So it was a real adventure for them being up there. But finally, we were able to establish and launch Orca in September. And why do we actually have Orca in Iceland? Is because we have the two conditions we need to have to install our plants. We have access to renewable energy and access to a safe storage space for CO2. And this actually enables us to do the entire process of carbon dioxide removal. So we're based on the second biggest geothermal power plant of the world, and we're using the renewable energy to make the collectors work. We're capturing the CO2 from the air, and then the CO2 is mixed with water. So it's a sort of highly concentrated sparkling water that we then inject underground, so approximately 1 kilometer underground. And there it reaches this basaltic rock formation. And I mentioned that it's a perfect storage space for the CO2, because when the CO2 comes into contact with this basaltic rock, or I should say, when the CO2 dissolved in water comes in contact with the basaltic rock, there's a natural reaction which starts to happen whereby the CO2 starts to turn into stone. So it's a mineralization process. And it takes about 2 years for CO2 that's been injected underground in Iceland to fully mineralize. And this is why we can actually say that we offer permanent carbon dioxide removal, because once the CO2 is underground, turned into stone, it's the safest way we can possibly imagine to have CO2 stored in a geological formation. So it really is quite an impressive and effective solution. And here you can see the whole process summarized in a nice picture. So we have the direct air capture collectors from Climeworks. In the middle, we have here these injection wells, we call them. They belong to our partners for storage, Carbfix. It's an Icelandic company. And here on the last bit, you can see the basaltic rock, where the CO2 has been already injected. So the white parts that you can see is mineralized CO2. And at Climeworks, we have this vision to inspire 1 billion people to remove carbon dioxide from the air. And we have a mission to become climate relevant. And here, this is quite technical, but you can see that we are scaling our capacity. So 4,000 tons of CO2 per year that Orca is currently removing. We're here on the Scale Up roadmap. It is still a drop in the ocean. It is a first step. It's showing that the technology works, that we can actually capture CO2 from the air, storing it permanently underground. The ambition is to become climate relevant and to be able to remove millions of tons of CO2 from the air. So we have this plan which enables us to go in this direction. So again, I'm very happy to be speaking with you and happy to answer any question on our technology, our developments, and extremely happy if you can share the word, spread the word. We have a website, Instagram, Facebook, so we're everywhere, and looking forward to the discussion with you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Celine. I mean, I'm just fascinated by this idea of turning carbon dioxide into geological formations. Like, it's just such a wonderful, amazing, complex sort of thing to get around. But and I know that it's just, like, as you were saying, like, it's just a first step, right? Like, it's but it's such an important first step as we move towards thinking of, we need all approaches. Like, there's not going to be one solution that fits all nations, that fits all peoples, that fits all targets. And so, like, it is a part of the solution. If we don't start pushing these technologies and pushing our innovation, then we're no further ahead. So thank you so much for introducing it to us. Now, before we move on to our youth leaders who are coming in to complement your conversation, I wanted to open it up. Any of our
Hello.
Ask a question. And
yeah, I want to ask a question.
Go ahead, friend from Bangladesh. Go ahead, ask a question.
Yeah. So how exactly do we capture carbon dioxide from the air, or how exactly do we separate it from the other components present in the air?
That's a great question. So actually our filter is very selective. So we have filter material which only captures CO2 molecules and does not capture anything else. So there's a lot of R&D that's invested in the development of the specific filter material that we put in the filters in our collectors. And how do we do it? It's really by, as I mentioned, it's by drawing the ambient air. So we have this connection from the air that's flowing through the collector, and the CO2 molecules actually touch or rub the filter material and then stick to it. So that's really the filter material which is capturing the CO2 molecules which are in the air.
Awesome.
Okay, thanks for answering.
Awesome, thanks so much for the question. We have a similar sort of vein question from our friends Noah and Zavi, who live in Canmore, Alberta, and they are wondering, can you use such technology, like, is it an Iceland thing? Is it based on the environment, or could it go to somewhere like Alberta where it's still cold, but it's not ice? I mean, we're not Iceland, but we are still cold. Or it could go to Bangladesh where it's hot. Like, is there limits to that?
That's also a great question. Actually, the climatic conditions do have an impact depending on the filter that we use. Our filter currently works very well in cold, humid climate like we have in Iceland, but DAC as a technology, direct air capture as a technology, can really be established anywhere where we have access to renewable energy and access to a safe storage space for the CO2 to develop the whole process of carbon dioxide removal as we do it. So we are currently looking at other locations in the US in Ethiopia, for example, or we could also store CO2 underground. Other places in Europe, we have a project in Oman at the moment. So there are really other places around the world where we can do this process as well.
Wonderful. So we'll maybe one or two more questions and then we'll move on to our youth. Is there anyone else? Oh, my goodness, there's so many questions. If one person wanted to unmute their microphone and ask their question, we would love to take it. Otherwise,
why not injected at a coal mine?
Okay,
Why injected at
yeah, we can hear
why
you.
injected in basaltic rock near Iceland? Why don't you just inject it into a coal mine? Won't that be a little bit more relevant?
So why we're not doing it at a coal mine? Is that the question?
Yeah, won't it be better?
So we actually don't need to be specifically located where there's more exhaust of CO2, because it's really the direct air capture. So we're capturing CO2 that's already in the air at this very low concentration currently that it's at, so the 415 ppm approximately. And then what we're focusing on is having a really, really safe storage space for the CO2 to make sure that that the CO2 will remain stored permanently underground. And when we say permanently, it's more than 10,000 years. And the way we do it in Iceland with the mineralization, this really enables us to have this permanent storage for the CO2. And I saw a question coming up about other types of stones. The project that we have in Oman is actually looking at storing CO2 in a stone called peridotite. It's with an Omani company called 4401, and they're developing this storage in peridotite. So there are other possibilities to store CO2 in other types of stone as well.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay, so we have a question coming in from YouTube, and they're wondering, so maybe we can go to Tom with this one, or hit someone from his team. But like we're hearing, like, obviously thinking positively about the removal of carbon removal, but what's the flip side of that? What are some of the other impacts that maybe we aren't anticipating that will, that are negatives or challenges or something like that? Tom, what do you think?
Well, I could answer, but I'd like to hear if anyone from the team would like to meet that question. There's so many different forms of carbon removal, so we can consider different impacts.
Okay, so is that okay, Tom?
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. So there's the way that we speak about it is trade-offs. And for example, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, you've got to get the wood from somewhere. So you need to ensure you have a sustainable forest resource. And that really does depend on your definition of sustainable. So there's a land take with any of those what are called nature-based solutions. So biochar, enhanced rock weathering, they all require some new decisions on land, some more than others. So afforestation, we've heard a lot from COP this week about how many trees everybody's going to plant, but that is in competition with sustainable agriculture, which can also store carbon in the soil. So there's a large trade-off there. For its own part, direct air capture needs to be somewhere where it's got a relatively low CO2 intensity of grid electricity, or it can generate renewably on site. Iceland is great for that because it's got a big geothermal store. So any nation with it doesn't need to be a kind of classical developed nation, like smaller nations like Costa Rica, for example, which have a massive hydropower electricity system, would be a good place. Anywhere where it's like super low carbon electricity, because the energy need is quite intensive. None of the carbon removal technologies come without some sort of trade-off. But for many, we see, for example, the presentation that we've just had on DAX, plus sides on things like modularity, ease of deployment, and and technologies that can be deployed sort of almost anywhere, are the ones that are taking a lot of attention at the moment.
We just add into that an interesting trade-off that's being explored at the moment. I discovered here in the Azores that there's a expedition preparing to sail through the mid-Atlantic to explore a form of blue carbon, which has huge potential for drawdown. In the North Atlantic, phytoplankton is fed by nutrient dust that runs off Greenland, the rock that's been crushed by the Greenland ice shelf. And that's the case in the Arctic and the Antarctic. Very fine dust, which is a nutrient for these microscopic marine organisms. And they use it to build their bodies and bloom. And then as they fall down and die, they become part of the marine sediment, the rock. So they have this permanent storage. So it seems like a very good natural method of carbon drawdown that this expedition is exploring to see if we can stimulate it to happen further down in the Atlantic. At the moment, it just happens near Greenland. So deploying this dust. Now, what they might find out is that it creates other things to grow, like algae that sucks the water out of the ocean. So they'll be exploring what the trade-offs are for a hugely promising technique, which is enhanced weathering by another name when it's deployed on the soil. And that's using rock dust to mineralize. In a similar way that with direct air capture, as Celine was explaining, the carbon is locked into the rock. This is like spreading rock out, and it can help rebuild soils, but it has huge promise for drawing carbon down into the oceans and being part of the cycle of whale carbon, which is a new form of carbon I learned about recently.
Amazing. Oh my goodness, Tom and Celine, we have so many questions. I have like 10 questions here on YouTube and they're all so good. And I know Mill Pond has a question. This is intense. It's hard, but we do for right now, we are going to cycle back. Don't worry. But for right now, I want to move on to our students, our youth leaders, because it's Youth Day at COP. We want to celebrate some of the amazing work that our youth are doing as well. And so I'm going to invite our friend Anaid to join us now. And she is going to speak to us a bit about what she is doing. But don't worry, hold on to your questions. If you're worried or you're going to forget, especially Mill Pond, because I know you just raised your hand, write it in the chat and we'll come back to it. All right, to my friend Anaid, you're welcome to unmute and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, first of all, could you put on the slides?
I would love to.
That would be great. Okay, so hello everybody. Today I'll be talking about a project I'm doing with my twin brother, Daniel Wanderer. And well, first of all, how did it all start? Well, when we were around 9 years old, we were invited by a Chinese martial arts master from Wudang Mountains, Sacred Mountains, and to study with him. And that was such an amazing opportunity and an honor. So for this next several years, that's where we lived. With no internet connection, no telephones, nothing, but just surrounded by such amazing and beautiful nature. And the project which I want to present to you today was born out of the clash of harmony and dissonance. The harmony of nature, which we experience so strongly in those mountains, and also the dissonance of how biodiversity is perceived in our perceived and managed in our society. And biodiversity is often treated as a wish list for humanity, something that is desirable but not really vital. And this is really a serious problem. And our project is focusing on endangered and threatened trees. And we really attempt to generate more awareness of the complex and often misunderstood relation between biodiversity loss and the climate crisis. And step by step, we are building a large-scale art installation. And we want to involve youth and also anyone else who wants to be involved to collaborate in creating the audio element of the installation, giving their voices literally and metaphorically to the 17,500 tree species that are under threat. We'll be collecting recordings, compiling, and creating a tapestry of all these voices. And this part of the project is artistic in nature, but every element of the installation is connected to existing scientific work. So we will be looking, is connected to scientific research, and we will be yes, okay, yes, the slides move. Wait, sorry, just I got disconnected for a second. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So each element of the installation is connected to scientific research. So this project is also about really building up all our skills and knowledge and shifting our relationship to science so that our future decisions and our future choices can be navigated by our awareness and understanding of the science. And we really want to invite all of you to be part of this project. And you can see in the here there's a link to the website where you can see how you can really participate. And we'll see how far we can get. There will be the biodiversity summit in Kunming in April. So we really hope that maybe some of this touched your hearts and you can join the project, and we'll see how far we can get together.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nate. That's just such a brilliant project that you have going. And I hope that some of our students, we were talking about this, I think it was yesterday, and how climate isn't just about the science. It's about art and how we feel about it and our stories. And that part of addressing art is learning how to empathize with other people and their situations and so art is crucial in that empathy and storytelling and understanding. And so thank you so much for undertaking this project. It sounds amazing and I can't wait to check it out myself. Now I want to invite your teacher, Ms. Parker, who I forgot to introduce before, to also send a little bit of context around the project you're undertaking, and then our next student who's going to join us as well, Farah, and the work that Ms. Parker is inspiring in students across the UK. And then maybe we'll have, just as we did for Tom and Celine, we'll have a question time for our students at the end. So thank you, Anade, and Becky, or Ms. Parker, over to you. I'd like to welcome you.
Hi, so I'm Becky Parker. I'm a teacher and I have the great honor to work with so many brilliant students. And my belief, and we all know this, that actually you, the youth, have the most brilliant, powerful, imaginative new ideas. And so we've set up this project with Learn Life, where Anade is from, that's based out of Barcelona, to link scientist, industrialist you with new ideas to support you. It's called Climate Change Innovation Project. And the whole idea of it is to give you a backup to really take your ideas seriously, to allow you to make contributions wherever you are across the world, to really give you agency to contribute. Because I passionately believe that you just need some backup if you need it. Loads of you don't, but say you need some scientific or industrial or entrepreneurial expertise, then we've got this fantastic wealth of experts who we've already met some of today who will help you. And so we're going to launch this major project from Learn Life in January. Anade is already part of that. And I've been working with lots of amazing students trying to showcase their wonderful work. And we've got two other schools right now, which Sarah will introduce. One is Richard Taylor Church of England Primary School in the north of England in Harrogate. And one is Farah Falco, who will speak for herself, who was at my last school and is now in California at Stanford doing her undergraduate course. And she has been so innovative in trying to enhance real participation, action and innovation in STEM and in climate change. So back to you. Shall we pass over to Sarah? Is that okay?
Yes, go straight to Farah. That was a wonderful introduction of her, and I don't think I could say it any better. So Farah, over to you.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So yes, I'm Farah. Professor Parker was my teacher back in high school, but I'm now in university in California. So I'm joining you guys from the West Coast, and I'm so excited to hear everyone. It's been really cool hearing everyone's stories, everyone's passions. I mean, we are definitely gonna change the world with everything that everyone is doing here. We are definitely going to make impact. So thank you so much to everyone we've heard so far. I'm gonna quickly talk to you about my nonprofit called STEM in Africa, and I'll work towards, working in climate change around Africa. So a bit of background, started SIA at the beginning of 2020, and the whole idea was just to try and get more young people, primarily females, working in STEM careers, as I thought a lot of the jobs that were offered, like in Nigeria, because that's where I'm from, but I think as a whole in Africa too, are mostly centered around, either being a lawyer or being a doctor, but there's not really the opportunity to be innovative. So SIA is hopefully that channel to encourage more young people to be innovative and come up with solutions to everyday problems we face, like climate change. So next slide would be great. So kind of what we've done in the past, like we've been running for almost 2 years now. We've had, for example, a conference week, which is basically where we had a week of just seminars, interactions, challenges, where we engaged a bunch of students all around Nigeria. And we just came together and we went through science experiments, we heard from speakers, and we gave them this challenge to, come up with one solution to climate change in Africa. Like we explained the concept to them because many of the students that we work with hadn't actually heard about climate change or didn't know what it was. So we explained it to them saying, look, we're facing this problem where the oceans are rising and it's going to affect our community. What do you think as an individual can you do to fix this problem? And they came up with a bunch of ideas, things like solar, different battery packs, different research. And then we actually got them to partner with the head of STEM education at Lagos State government to actually start to implement those ideas. So that's one of the things that we've done in our conference week. Our second slide, please. And then over the summer, again, we did something similar. We had a 4-day summer camp, and we heard from a bunch of people in different sectors. We had things of wellness, skincare, genetics, doctor, medicine. So the idea is that we're just exposing them to a plethora of ideas within STEM, so they can kind of find out what they're passionate about, what do they like, what's interesting to them, and then they can use that knowledge to refine skills and be innovative. That's kind of our message, just giving them access to a plethora of opportunities within STEM, showing them you don't have to be a doctor, guys. You could create your own model, you could create this, you can change this, just showing them that there's so much more to the world than our binary options that are mostly shown to a lot of young kids around Africa. And next slide, please. Again, so like I said, as an organization, we're very passionate about climate change and, teaching our students about sustainability. During our conference weeks and our summer camp, we always do various activities about getting them to be innovative. How can we solve this problem? So we thought actually we want to build a science hub in Nigeria to actually provide a space for these young students to come and collaborate and be innovative and work with other students. And we're deciding to build that hub from recycled plastic bottles and shipping containers. So we're going to have this hub in Nigeria, and it's going to have a science lab, an IT studio, and a designer with a 3D printer. And the whole building is going to be run on solar energy, and it's a very sustainable idea. And in order to help that, we started a recycling program around Nigeria, where we're collecting the bottles to build our science hub in Lagos. And this is just kind of a quick overview of how it works. We've partnered with a local truck company in Nigeria who collects the bottles monthly, and then we use those bottles towards the hub. Next slide, please. And then also we do lots of initiatives when I go back. So obviously I'm between California and Nigeria, used to be the UK and Nigeria. And when we go back, we always try to do some type of event. So this summer, just for an example, we did a beach cleanup around various days, and we had just volunteers just show up every morning and collect plastics. Again, those bottles are going towards our science hub. So everything that we collect in terms of like any recyclable material, we're going towards building our science hub. And then next slide, please. I don't know, is it just me that can't see the next slide? Oh, sorry, back. Yeah, this slide. Okay, again, this is just kind of talking more about the Science Hub and our project and that. And what's been so amazing is to see like our students be so excited to have this hub and actually, you know, give us ideas on how we can make it more sustainable. Like, for example, we weren't thinking of originally doing like everything on bottles, but they also then gave the idea of shipping containers. So they come up with these really cool, innovative ideas that even us, who are a lot older and have been fortunate to a better education, can't even think of. So that's honestly what's the most inspiring about it. Seeing them actually learn these things and be innovative and create ideas about, you know, what we can do in the hub to make it more sustainable, and also what they as individuals can do in their community to be more sustainable. And yeah, these are just some ways that you can get involved in SIA if you're interested. And then if you just click to the last slide, that would have all our contact information. So that's our website, our Instagram, and our email. But yes, thank you so much. And it's been amazing hearing from all the other speakers too.
Oh my goodness, amazing. That is such an intense and really valuable project. I'm so thankful that you were able to join us today, Farah. Now, as everyone can see, it is 10:50, well, it's 10:58 in Edmonton. It is 4:58 here in Scotland. We are run out of time, and I wish we had time for questions. We even had another primary school that had submitted a video about the work that they're doing. We're going to send that video out as an attachment to everyone who registered, so you can see this amazing work of the primary school and how you can get as young as grade, well, we would call them kindergartners or grade 1s or grade 2s, but like that age of 5 to 7, like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be an adult. You can do stuff now. And I think that Tom and Celine would agree that it isn't about waiting until you've had a career and you've built experience and you've done an internship. Like, you can get started now. What inspires you? What are you passionate about? How can you involved in climate and influence the people who are making decisions? We're here at COP. These students are here at COP trying to impact the conversations that are happening, and you can do that too. I know our friends from Bangladesh wanted to share. I know we had questions from Mill Pond, but I know that Tom and his crew shared their email in the chat, so I hope you reach out to them. Again, you can send an email to me and I'd be happy to connect you with any of our speakers today. We have some more chat sharing going on right now as well, so please reach out at any point. We have a meeting at right on the hour that we have to get to with someone from a development agency that wants to speak to our kids, and so we're going to get them over to the Action Hub, as it's called, and speaking to that organization. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful hosting all of you, to learning so much about a bunch of different things and new technologies, and I'm really inspired by our conversation. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful morning, noon, night, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you so much.